Okay, but what does an editor actually do for your text? Hey, everybody, welcome back. If you haven't been here before, my name is Jane, and I am a writer of historical cozy mysteries. And today we're going to be talking about how to work with an editor. Specifically, we're going to be talking about what you can expect from an editor. What kind of comments are they going to give you to help you improve your text beyond mere proofreading. We're not talking about grammar checking, looking for typos. What we're talking about are those comments that help you shepherd the text to a next level. And so, what we're going to do, the way we're going to do this is I'm going to pull out the first scene of my upcoming novella, Murder, Mr. Hamilton, and I'm just going to go through it. I'm going to go through the comments. I haven't really planned this out, I haven't planned my edits, so if I get stuck in a loop writing the same sentence for, 10, 15 times, which is probably going to happen, I may clip that part out. But what I want to show you are the quality of the comments and the kind of clarity and consistency that a good editor can help you achieve.
Chapter 1. I'm not wearing a corset. Maggie rolled her eyes. You have to, she said. The dress won't fit without one. It'll be fine. I grabbed the mass of cream-colored cotton out of Maggie's hands and did my best to wriggle into it. But no matter how we tried, we couldn't get it to close at the waist. Told ya. Maggie helped me out of the dress and presented me with the dreaded corset. It was white and utilitarian without a scrap of ribbon or lace, but it had a vampy hourglass shape that, I had to confess, gave it a whole lot of drama. I allowed Maggie to lace it into it, gritting my teeth. Okay, and then we have a comment here, which is that Maggie is the closest name to this phrase. The phrase gritting my teeth may confuse readers. Right, because you'd read gritting and you'd think that modified Maggie until you got to my, and then you have to kind of reimagine in your head. Consider I allowed Maggie to lace me into it. You remember the rules, she asked? 2 hours, I said, gritting my teeth. I don't know. I don't like that either, though, because that implies that gritting my teeth is a reaction to this dialogue instead of to getting laced into the corset. So I am going to leave it. Yeah, I'm going to leave it the way it is. I allowed Maggie to lace me into it, gritting my teeth. What a girl wouldn't do for a brief walkabout through time. You remember the rules? 2 hours, I said. Minimal contact, in and out. And take lots of pictures? Maggie made a low sound of exasperation. No souvenirs. All right. Here's our comment, maybe have Maggie knot the last lace aggressively here to give resolution to the corset scene. Right. You do say allow to lace me into it, but that could be used to describe a continuing act or a completed act. I read it first as a continuing act through the conversation. Okay. So I love this comment because this is a big thing for me, is clarity all the way through, keeping your level as low as possible. So I am going to take that comment, and how am I going to do that? Maggie gave the laces a final yank and knotted them closed with brutal efficiency. No souvenirs. Right. She dumped the mountain of fabric that was a late 18th century dress over my head and came around to look me in the eye. And you'll follow the rules? Sure, I said, fighting my way through the openings at arm and neck. I'm going to leave it. Lucy. She bit her lip and leaned in close. This visit isn't exactly approved. When your older sister gets a job at Epoch Historical Incorporated, studying the first applications of time travel, do you politely wait to be invited to take a look around? Bide your time, figuring the technology will be safer to use in a few years anyway. C. Use every dram of sisterly influence you have to get into that facility and try out time travel firsthand. Okay, so he just suggests adding question marks to the end of each of these, which I like. I think I'm going to go back to you've got, and he suggests you have, which is certainly more correct, but I gotta do my thing. It's a one-question quiz. A plus or F. Okay, one question. This is an adjective. It's a modifier for quiz, so yes, it should be a single word with a hyphen, except change. I had always been a history buff. Okay. This would lead some readers to conclude that she no longer is at the time of narration, which may be true. Okay, yeah, we can change that to I've always been a history buff. Maggie grew up with her nose buried in fairy tales and chapter books. Okay. Right, he made fairy tales a single word. Yeah, we can accept that change. And chapter books, he says, is a phrase he doesn't know. So, sure. We can change this to mysteries. I'm a parent, so chapter books is a phrase very familiar to me because that's what my kids are reading now, but yeah, it's not everybody. But stories of the past had always been more real to me. There was a reason for that. They were more real. All right, and he says, whenever a complete sentence follows a colon, cap it. However, this might strike readers as not normal, so do what you like. I'm going to cap it. I like it. All right, and about were, he says, the italicization of this word means a lot in a story about time travel. My initial reading is that the stories she liked are no longer real because they no longer happen, because when she goes into the past, she changes it. This is just my reading. If you just mean it as a point of emphasis, it should be fine too. Just consider the risk. Okay. So again, this is a great comment. He's just thinking about ways that my readers might get confused, and I really like this. All right, but I am going to leave it. I feel like it says what I want it to say. All right, they were more real. They were the stories of men and women who, brick by brick, idea by idea, had built the world I lived in and the amazing technology I was about to use. All right, and he says, by rule, no comma should be here. Instead, use an em dash. Okay, I am going to do that, and in particular because this sentence has gotten very long. So yeah, em dash it up. Ladies and gents, it doesn't get more real than that. Some of my love for the past must have rubbed off on Maggie, because here we were at Epoch. She had taken the job after grad school, and I knew she'd worked hard to get it, soldiering through a near-endless series of interviews and a vetting process that took months. I'm pretty sure vetting includes interviews, he says. Maybe just background check. Yeah, definitely. So this was a sentence that I just wanted to go on for a while, and it's true that interviews and vetting process are near synonyms. So I'm going to change this to what he suggests, which is background check. Maggie was exactly the kind of person you'd want working at a sensitive research facility. Serious, discreet, painfully honest. I would have had a harder time, I thought, netting the gig. And he says here, it doesn't seem that the narrator is thinking this during the course of the conversation, but rather reflecting on it later in her narration, so maybe delete this. Yeah, agree. I thought is doing nothing for us here, so let's just... That being said, there was no way I would do anything to jeopardize Maggie's position at Epoch, and not just because I'd lose access to the facility. Maggie was more than your average awesome big sis. Our parents had passed away 6 years ago, so since she was 19, Maggie had been the one who looked out for me. All right, what is our comment here? Maybe help the reader absorb this information by adding at that point or something like that. Unless you mean that the narrator is narrating live in real time, but the tense seems to suggest otherwise. Oh, okay, 6 years ago at that point. Right, 6 years ago at the point at the point that we were at Epoch together. No, I'm going to leave 6 years ago. Yeah, I do get the point that, like, she's writing this down later after it happened. But I feel like the narrative distance is close enough that I don't really have to stand on that point. Maggie didn't demand my loyalty. She'd never demand anything, but she damned well deserved it. I sighed. She was going to make me say it. I'd never do anything to make you look bad, Maggie. I grinned at her. Now let's go. But before we could, there was the hair. My blonde locks were swept up and piled efficiently, if somewhat sloppily, into a horde of curls atop my head. All right, what is our comment here? Initially, this could be taken as her hair before it was prepped. Okay, so she could have already had her hair done, and when she says, my blonde locks were swept up, then that means I am describing how they look now, but I actually mean that this is happening now, so... Then we walked down the hall to the portal room. Maggie handed me the chronometer, which looked exactly like an old, beaten-up metal pocket watch. I clicked the button on top, and the cover popped up to reveal the clock face. The glass was badly scratched. Very authentic, I said. It's actually just a touch anachronistic for 1800, Maggie says, and he suggests deleting just, which I agree. It's actually a touch anachronistic is exactly the same meaning. But, tighter. But with the lid closed, it'll resemble an ordinary locket. She lifted the chain of metal links attached to the chronometer. You can wear it just like a necklace. Right, and he deleted that was, which is a good call. And what do I do when I want to return? Ideally, you won't have to do much of anything. Just keep wearing the chronometer, and when you approach the portal, it will open up. Then you just walk right through. But do please remember to come back before it winds down. It winds? I shot Maggie a look. Doesn't that seem like someone went a touch overboard on the verisimilitude? All right, so we have two comments here. Consider, it seems to me someone went overboard, making this a comment and not a question. Yeah, I agree, because it's less wordy and less likely to be confused. Yes, it seems like. And he doesn't like verisimilitude. He says, consider word choice. So, all right, verisimilitude is what I would say, but I don't know. I wonder if realism, might just be more appropriate. Maggie crossed her arms, and from the look on her face, I knew who that someone was. It doesn't actually wind, she said. This is how we chose to record the battery life. She turned the chronometer over so I could see the clock face. I peered at it closely. And he says, tautology as peering denotes careful examination, but something characters might be apt to say. Yeah, they might. I think I am going to take that out. I think I peered at it is the same and just tighter. In addition to the hour and minute hand, there was a thin red second hand, but it moved sluggishly. In fact, as I stared at it, I could barely see the thing move at all. And he suggests deleting it, and I agree. Get back before the second hand reaches the 12, and you'll be fine. Got it. It still seemed like the Epoch team was being a little overly whimsical with that one, but who was I to complain? And he says, strange and wordy construction. Overly whimsical is likely sufficient. Yeah, agree. I was about to travel through time. So how long do I have? Maggie squinted at the chronometer. About 4 days, she said. Much more than you need. Just, be aware. It was, regrettably, more than I needed. And he says technically a misuse of an adverb, but one many people make. Yeah. Maggie had declined to send me back with more than a few coins in my purse. First of all, Epoch's authentic historical coins were in the locked equipment cabinet, and she hadn't wanted to requisition all of them. Second, she wanted me home before dark. Since I didn't have enough money to rent a room, I'd be back all right, but I'd try to make the trip last as long as I could. The early 1800s was what Epoch was studying, so that's where I was headed. Third use of was in this sentence. He is making maybe reconstruct. Okay. Yes. All right. So we're just going to move this first clause around. I couldn't have been more delighted. I loved American history. Always had. And I do like this little M dash here. I'd taken the last week to bone up on the period, and I thought I could get along fairly well. The portal chamber was the drabbest, most utilitarian room you could possibly imagine. Okay, so he has a comment here on utilitarian, which is that I have used it twice. I used it to describe the corset, now I'm using it to describe the room. And sometimes a word is just right. So I get his point. It is a little distracting because it's kind of what do they call them? 25-cent words. It's a big word used twice in a small scene, but I'm going to go for it. There were 3 doors arrayed around the room made of the kind of plasticky wood pattern laminate they use on cheap office doors. He says, does this include the door through which she entered? If not, say 3 more doors. Yeah, I'm going to say 3 more doors. See, I just love the clarity, the smoothing of any possible confusion. I just want you to be able to keep your head in the book and not have to, you get it. So I'm stuck using this wireless keyboard for my commas because my commas and periods are broken on my laptop. So they're small, but they're kind of important. So, all right, so we add a comma there. The floor was stained linoleum. The only impressive thing in the entire room was the computer, a sleek silver job with 4 enormous monitors and enough wires out of it to confuse even the most dedicated IT consultant. It was sitting on a folding table, and next to it sat a coffee maker with a half-full pot of old brew. So this is what a super secret high-tech operation looks like, I asked. It is when it's paid for with government grants. Okay, yeah, super secret is a modifier for operation, therefore it is hyphenated. And, okay, this is actually my comment here. Is there a more reasonable line here? Right, because I was wondering, did I really want them working for the government? And so his comment is actually a response to that, I think. He says, possibly. What can I say? The limits of government funding. No, I'm going to stick with my government grants joke, and I am going to be okay with it being associated with the government in some way. Maggie seated herself at the workstation and clicked away for a bit at the keyboard. The monitors came on, bathing her face in a blue glow. And he suggests it reflected off her glasses in such a way that her eyes became 2 rectangles of gleaming light. Okay, yeah, I am going to take that comment, but I'm actually going to not do the semicolon here. I'm going to do a period because it's getting to be kind of a long sentence. That door. She pointed to the door on the left of the room and nodded at me. Be careful. I approached the door and swung it open. Inside, there was little more than an ordinary closet, but right at the threshold, there was a strange kind of ripple in the air, something barely visible but undeniable. I felt it more than saw it, a faint electric charge that made the hair on my skin stand up. I extended one finger toward the ripple and poked just lightly at the barrier between the present and the past. Okay, he says, a tautology, but something a character might say. Right, poking is lightly. Yeah, let's actually get rid of that. A frisson of energy ran from my finger up to my spine, and I heard Maggie sigh. I looked over at her. Everyone has to do that, she said. I couldn't see her eyes rolling, but somehow I felt them do it just the same. All right. Consider deleting somehow. Right. Completely agree. Somehow is unnecessary, but Everyone has to do that, she said. I couldn't see her eyes rolling, but I felt them anyway. Just walk on through. Much better. I faced the doorway and steeled myself, something I wouldn't have thought I would need to do only 5 minutes ago. But now that I was faced with the door, I couldn't deny that what I was about to do was momentous, incredible, and yeah, okay, a little scary. So he suggests doorway become portal, which is both clearer and honestly more interesting. Okay, so suggests a mirror instead of only. Yeah, I like that. I stepped through the door, becomes portal, and the electric tinkle ran throughout my entire body, leaving my ears ringing. And just like that, I was standing in a 19th century alleyway. with a million scents and sounds coming at me all at once. It was too much. Although I wasn't physically off balance, I felt uneasy, out of whack, and I stretched out my hands to both sides. The fingers of my right hand touched a wall made of rough-hewn wood. I stared at my hand, splayed out on the wooden wall, and suddenly felt as though my heart would burst. I did a quick pirouette, my skirts spinning out in a happy circle. Then I extended a hand toward the wall again and touched it, lightly, with one finger. Real, I whispered. I heard a sound. I whipped my head toward the end of the alley. Had the sound come from there? It had been faint enough that I had to still my entire body to really listen for it. Okay, he suggests really, and I'm going to accept that. And then I heard it again, a low, painful moan. And he doesn't like painful because, he says it suggests that the moan caused the narrator pain. So he suggests pain-filled. I'm going to go with agonized. I hesitated. Did I want to meet some drunkard in an alley in 1801 New York? Not much. But whoever had made that sound was obviously in pain. I couldn't just ignore it. I found the blood before I found the girl. Okay, what does he say here? He says, my impression of alleyways is that they are straight. So it would be surprising that she didn't see the body first, before the blood, unless the body were hidden behind a trash can or some other obstruction at the turn of the corner. Right. So what happened here is I got lazy, and I didn't want to fully imagine the alley and what's in it and what kind of trash and how narrow it is, and I just sort of wrote my way through it without doing that deep imagining. So now I got to do it in editing. There was a wide swath of it mixing with muddy brown water in the alley and turning it a dark, evil black. He says maybe a bit much. The girl must have fallen in the middle of the alley, but she had dragged herself against the wall of the nearest building, and I'm going to say here that she's huddled behind a pile of trash. All right, if she's in the middle, wouldn't buildings be equal distance? Yes, and yet I'm not going to fuss with it. She lay there like a pile of forgotten laundry. Her hair, a dark mess of tumbled curls, had fallen out of its arrangement and lay in a puddle of muddy water. I let out a low hiss of horror and fell to my knees beside her. I ran my hands over her body, trying to find her injury. She didn't assist me or resist. She didn't respond at all. Consider, nor did she resist. Yeah, I like that. In a moment, I had found the knife. The handle protruded from her chest and was now concealed beneath her limp body. I hesitated, uncertain what to do. I felt certain I shouldn't remove the knife. Okay, seems contradictory. She was just uncertain, and therefore it's distancing to say now she's certain. Okay. So we're going to say I knew I shouldn't remove the knife, which, everybody knows that, right? Like, you've seen enough action movies or read enough mystery novels, you don't take out the knife. I knew I shouldn't remove the knife, but should I stay with her or run for help? She moaned again. She sounded weaker now. Okay, run for help. Got it. I tried to get to my feet, but to my surprise, the woman on the ground gripped my hand. All right, you've called her girl up to this point. Okay, yes. I remember when I started calling her woman, and that's because the word girl was starting to sound so repetitive to me, and because also girl covers like a lot of ground, right? I don't think anywhere here I have clarified that she is in fact about 18 or 20. So what I need to do actually is go. All right, so we will go on calling her girl, but we will just clarify that this is not a child we're talking about. It's a young woman. Yeah, the on the ground is obviously not needed. It's completely correct there. Pushed something into it, a paper of some kind. Okay, he says maybe pressed as into the palm of an open hand. Consider whether her hand was open or closed to get the right word. Maybe she pressed in and closed her hand around it firmly, conveying how important it must be. I don't think she's strong enough for that. She's on the edge. So, but I do like pressed. We're gonna go with pressed. There was no time to read it. I shoved it into my bodice. Then I did what I should have had the sense to do earlier. I threw back my head and screamed for help. Almost right away, I heard shuffling footsteps, and then there was a man at the end of the alleyway. And he says, "Earlier you mentioned that the character turned her head toward the end of the alley in response to the moaning. Then a new character appears at the end of the alleyway. The placement could be confusing." Yes. "Hello," I called. "We need a doctor, please." The man approached us, moving slowly. He suggests changing that to approach me. I'm going to do that. There was a lopsided slant to his gait, and something about him that I instantly disliked. All right, it says, "Do you mean something else, or do you mean his gait she disliked?" Okay, I don't mean that she disliked the gait. If I say something else, then that implies that she disliked the gait and something else. And so let's just break these two thoughts. "Have a bit of trouble?" he asked as he got close. He was standing over us now, his big body silhouetted against the noonday sky, and there was a rank smell coming off him. "She's badly hurt," I said. "Can you run for a doctor?" Errand boy, am I? And then he was hauling me up by the front of my bodice, his grip strong, his breath suddenly foul in my face. And he suggests getting rid of suddenly? Yeah. You're out of there. I screamed, but it was a pathetic scream, high and weak and frightened. Yes, frightened is completely redundant with what is already going on. With one hand he held me, and with the other he pawed at my body. He found the small leather purse immediately with the few coins I brought. He pocketed it and dropped me. I landed on my butt hard enough to make my teeth clack together. Still, I looked up at him. "Take the money," I said, "but please, we must have a doctor." All right, this is not an editor comment, but I don't like "we must have a doctor." Like, after I wrote this scene, I really decided that one of the things in this book is that she is going to use modern diction all the time, unapologetically, and it's going to cause a few communication problems. So this "we must have a doctor" sounds too 19th century. So I'm going to change that to "we need a doctor." "Got anything else?" he snarled. I shook my head, but as I did, sunlight glinted off the small brass chronometer hung around my neck. All right, he says, "It's best to include this detail when you first mention the chronometer, and then just say chronometer from now, then on, unless the detail matters, of course." Okay. Yep. And then his hand darted down and fastened around the chronometer. He yanked hard, and the chain snapped. Okay. He says, tautology in this form, because yanking is pulling hard. But maybe something your character would say. Maybe add something like harder than it appears he was capable. He yanked, and the chain snapped. The force of the yank wrung another small scream out of me, and then he was off running. I should have gone after him. I needed that chronometer, or I'd be stuck here in the past forever. But I couldn't just abandon the girl, reverting to girl again. Yes, and we're sticking with that. I would have to run for a doctor myself. Her hand, clutching the folds of my skirt, stopped me. And what is our comment here? He says, maybe again she stopped me from leaving, this time her hand clutching the folds of my skirt. She struggled for a moment, and then her eyes opened partway. They were bright blue, but clouded, fading. Okay, he deleted a comma here. I like my comma. They locked on me. She mumbled something that sounded like lucky. What? I leaned over her. What did you say? I locked my eyes on hers, willing her to keep her eyes open. Okay, I had them, he suggests, her eyes. But even as I did, they were closing. They would not open again. Okay, I don't like repeating eyes twice in the sentence, but I agree that willing her to keep them open just becomes a bit something the reader kind of has to keep track of. It's not totally clear. Her eyes were closing. They would not open again. Okay, so that is the first chapter of Murder, Mr. Hamilton. And I hope it gives you an idea of what kind of comments you can expect from an editor. I'm really happy with my editor. I love the clarity that this edit has added to everything. I once heard Orson Scott Card say that a book is not a complete work of art. It is a script. And the reader performs that script in his mind. And your job as the writer is to write it in such a way that he can't misperform it. And so I just love the clarity, making sure that the reader never has to go back and re-figure out exactly what I meant. I'm really happy with how this first chapter is turning out. Check out.